What is the creepiest thing that has happened to you in the woods? Be in the middle of the Australian bush at least 50 kilometers from any civilization or human. I'm hunting with my brother, and we are startled by what seems to be a perfectly clean and unused oven sitting there, no dust, nothing. It even still had the warranty tags hanging off of it and everything. We just continued on our way feeling confused, and weirded out zoologists have yet to discover every secret of the Australian wildlife. The strangest thing that happened to me in the woods was when my friends and I were mountain biking. We had to stop to throw our bikes over a washout. It was about 3 feet across and a 10-foot drop, so not very dangerous. As we are about to throw our bikes across the gap, a group of 10 guys dressed as ninjas appeared on the other side. They all hopped the gap and ran by without a word. This happened in Alabama during the mid-90s. My friends and I laughed. We realized soon after that they were today's equivalent of LARPers. Not a threatening situation at all, but very strange and hilarious. Story goes that a bunch of kids, 8 to 12-year-olds, were running around some of the woods and stumbled upon a hole in the ground that had been dug recently. The younger kids thought this was great because they could use it to play around in and whatnot. But one of the older kids realized that what they actually found was a pre-dug grave. Supposedly, it was about 1 meter wide, 2 meters long, and 1 meter deep as well. Kids run home to tell their parents, who in turn tell the local policeman, who gets the kids to lead them to it. The cop agrees that this is suspicious, but doesn't have the resources to stake it out 24/7. Instead, he chooses to leave it as is and come back every day to check. Nothing happens for a while, until one day the cop checks and finds the hole filled, and he brings in a forensic unit, and they recover the remains of a young woman, known to the policeman, who immediately races to the home of the woman to find out what happened. When he and the other cops get there, they find the husband in the middle of disposing of incriminating evidence. I actually visited the side forest in Japan by myself last year. I was near Mount Fuji anyway, so figured it wasn't much of a detour. I'd been there for about 2 hours, perfectly comfortably, hadn't gotten frightened seeing a few things. Then at one point, at probably the furthest point I'd walked, I came across a sleeping bag under a tarp. One thing to know about Aokigahara Forest: it's a dead silent, no insects or birds. It's also a forest grown on top of an ancient lava and the dead roots of previous trees, so there's really no ground level. There are caverns and holes everywhere. It's actually very dangerous to walk in, so I'd approached this sleeping bag when suddenly noticed that it looks like something was in it, and a wave of an awful smell hit me. I panicked a little and turned around to get away from it, but my foot went straight into the rotting roots, and I got stuck for about 3 minutes. Not very long, but I was completely freaked out, totally convinced I was a few feet away from a dead body in this dark, silent forest and unable to get away. Eventually, I got loose and didn't turn back. Just marched the hour straight out of that place. The whole walk back, I felt incredibly uneasy. I deleted most of the photos I'd taken out of this sense of respect. I guess I don't believe in the supernatural, but that was as close as I'd come to it. I used to live in Texas, and being a runner would often seek out wooded paths to run. One summer day, Friday I believe, I went for a run in the evening around 6 p.m. through a local park with a paved path through the woods. Everything started out fine. The wind started picking up, and a storm was approaching. But I thought I could finish the run before the rain hits. And then I wake up, and it's the middle of the night, and I'm stumbling around off trail in the woods. I spend what felt like forever crawling around because I was so tired and dizzy trying to find something to drink to slake my thirst. Couldn't find anything. I vaguely recall eating snails and insects to try and get some oyster. And I eventually find my way back to the path where a guy eventually comes by and calls for help. I actually was missing for 2 nights and ended up with extreme dehydration. Doctors don't think I would have made it another day. It turns out it was no more than half a mile from the path, but was too disoriented to figure that out, and the cover was too thick for the search parties to find me. I don't remember much of anything that happened after I started my run. And no one has any idea as to what happened. You were lucky in a few ways. Snails can carry a parasite called rat longworm that can end up in your brain. When I lived in North Vancouver, my home was in a forest on a mountain. I saw a shadow of a figure past my window in the middle of the night and made some noise, but not enough to fully wake me up. The next morning, I found my backpack to be completely ruined. There was trash everywhere, and my wooden fence looked like a tank drove over it. There were deep indentations in the grass. It left a trail that carried on to the neighbor's yard. Later that day, the news reported that a bear was wild in my area, and to remain cautious when outdoors. It's not too unusual, especially for Vancouver. But it is the creepiest thing that I'd experienced in a forest. The local airport asked us to go check a wooded area in town because someone was pointing lasers at their planes, obstructing their vision to land. We go to check it out, get deep in the woods. And at the end of the path is a tree. At the top of the tree was glowing red eyes. Freaked us out, but whatever. Then every few seconds, the eyes would move a few feet down the tree, constantly pointed in our direction and making no noise. Once it got halfway down, we were like this and took off. Whatever it was inching its way down to come check us out. And I wasn't waiting around to find out what it was. We never caught the laser bandits. Heck, maybe it was old red eyes. Who knows? In the summer of 2004, I was camping in Colorado with my cousins. We were up high on the side of a small wooded mountain, overlooking a valley. We didn't see anyone else up there. But on the second day, we heard a group of dogs barking down below us, a couple hundred yards away at least, and they wouldn't stop. We thought they were hunting dogs. But we never heard any people, and the dogs never seemed to move. It was the same. 3 or 4 dogs barking in the same place, for hours. At first, we thought it was strange, but whatever. But as night drew, the barking got closer and more rabid, like the dogs were getting angry. We were armed. My cousin is a gun lover, but it started to get slightly unnerving. We were sitting around the campfire when my oldest cousin stood up and says, "I think we should leave. I don't have a good feeling about staying here another night." We all agreed and packed up the camp pretty quickly, put out our fire, before hopping in the truck and leaving. I remember putting the last few things in the back of the truck and hearing those dogs getting closer and closer. We noped out of there pretty quickly, and nothing came of it. But it was still a little creepy. A few years back, my buddy and I decided to go camping out in Uwharrie Forest. Normally we stayed pretty close to the primitive camping areas, but we decided that we wanted to hike deep into the woods to be away from everyone. It was about midnight when we were walking through the woods where we were. There shouldn't have been anyone out that far as we were walking. I heard what sounded like someone walking toward us. It was so dark. All I could do was scan the area with my headlamp. We both started freaking out a bit and had our pistols out at this point. Then we hear someone yell, "Don't move, we're coming out." All of a sudden, a bunch of soldiers come out of nowhere. We were completely surrounded and had no idea they were even there. Turns out, Army Special Forces was running a training exercise, and we walked right into the middle of it. We all laughed about it. They checked to make sure we knew our location, and then they moved on. Probably the scariest, coolest thing that's ever happened to me. What a twist. Glad you guys had a good laugh about it. I went hunting on a mountain in southern VA with my cousins, and seeing as I was in rather poor shape, I was in the back of the pack the entire time. We were the last group to leave. As we went in the afternoon, walking back down, I could have sworn I heard footsteps behind me. We get back, and the first thing I see is a missing persons thing for a young couple that was found murdered on the trail. A friend and I were messing around an old abandoned 100-year-old farmhouse out in the woods. And afterwards, we were walking down the gravel road out in the middle of nowhere. I looked behind us and see a guy in a hockey mask was behind us and chased us all the way down the road until we heard him yell for us to stop. Turns out it was my brother-in-law who followed us and thought it would be hilarious to scare this out of us. Happened to my friends, not me, thank God. But there was a rarely used mountain road. My friends would drive up, pull off, and smoke under the stars. So one night they're up there passing a ball and standing in a circle. And in the flare of the lighter, they realize there's an extra person just chilling in the circle. Turns out he was camping with some of his friends, was also stoned, saw the flare of the lighter, and decided to just hang out with my friends. He just forgot to introduce himself or announce his presence. There is an area in the woods behind our house. I cannot walk through. When I try to, my hearing goes away, and I start to feel like I will pass out, as well as getting immense pressure in my chest. That particular area always looks darker than the rest of the woods, and a lot of the foliage there is dead. The 2 times I tried to look around, I cut my leg open, and cannot remember how one time in Caryville, Wisconsin, my friends and I went to the children's cemetery. A bunch of children were murdered in a school house in the town. Anyways, we went to the cemetery, and it was late at night, and we were walking around reading these gravestones, and a truck pulls up on the road and points its lights right at us and starts revving its engine really loud and flashing its lights. We were so scared. We got in our cars and started driving away. They followed us all the way out of town, speeding up next to us and almost running us off the road. Worst night ever. You not just last night. Me and my best friend, we're at a park near us, right? It's like 2 a.m. But we had nothing better to do than this. Northeast Ohio. So we go down this path, and it's dark as hell. So we use the flash on our phones. Well, we turn right, and there's this picnic table, in perfect dark. iPhone lights aren't bright at all. We see glowing eyes in it. And we look, and there's this guy not moving. Eyes open, just curled into a ball there. We move closer to see if he's dead. Betty fucking gets up, screaming at us, and starts swinging some stick or something. We scream sorry and take off. And as we run, he just chased us through the woods, back to the parking lot. I have never known deep fear that much in my life. I was a girl guide on a camping trip. About 11 years old, in a tent with 4 other girls. It was 9 p.m. or so. And there was a strange noise outside our tent. Then a low male voice saying something like, "Girls, you need to come out now. I've got something I need to tell you." A Kayla, then a noise like he was touching the outside of the tent. We all felt absolutely silent and stared at each other. None of our leaders were a Kayla. Scouts, not girl guides, and it made no sense. One of us started panicking and crying. Me and this other girl told the others we'd get help, got these safety whistles, screamed bloody murder and ran, until we found one of the leaders. Police came and brought sniffer dogs. Turned out there had been something similar reported recently. A public footpath ran right alongside the pitching area in those woods. I was camping as a kid, sleeping next to my dad in the back of the truck that had a shell on it. Restored our food in a storage bin underneath the canoe that was strapped to the top of the truck. Approximately 2 a.m., 2 grizzly bears climbed on top of the truck to rob us of our condiments and hot dog buns. Dad banged his flashlight on the side of the truck. The bears fled into the night.